Om Namo Narayanaya. Welcome back. Today we are on Chapter 4, Vidyura approaches Maitreya. Sounds interesting? I really don't know. I do have to apologize. The windows are open when I make this video and a lot of these videos, and so you're hearing the traffic go by on what is kind of a main street, but it gets really warm in here, and I don't want to close them. Plus I have the two cats and they prefer this. So please excuse the traffic. I just figure this just makes this all real down home, which is kind of what I want. This is not any formal lecture or anything like that. This is just like what you would be doing if you were at home reading. Lots of annoyances. So here we go, Chapter 4. Thereafter, all of them, the descendants of Vrishni and Bhoja, being permitted by the Brahmanas, partook of the remnants of prasada, and also drank liquor made of rice. By drinking, they all became delirious and bereft of knowledge, and they touched the cores of each other's hearts with harsh words. As by the friction of bamboo destruction takes place, so also at sunset by the interaction of the faults of intoxication, all their minds became unbalanced, and destruction took place. Lord Vishnu, after foreseeing the end of his family by his eternal potency, went to the bank of the river Sarasvati, sipped water, and sat down underneath a tree. The Lord is the vanquisher of the distresses of one who is surrendered unto him. Thus he who desired to destroy his family told me previously to go to Badarikashrama. Yet in spite of my knowing his desire to destroy the dynasty, Vidyura, I followed him because it was impossible for me to bear separation from the lotus feet of my master. Thus following, I saw my patron and master sitting alone and thinking deeply, taking shelter on the bank of the river Sarasvati, although he is the shelter of the goddess of fortune. The Lord's body is blackish, but is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge, and very, very beautiful. His eyes are always peaceful, and they are reddish, like the rising morning sun. I can immediately recognize him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead by his 4 hands, different symbolic representations, and yellow silk garments. The Lord was sitting, taking rest against a young banyan tree, with his right lotus foot on his left thigh, and although he had left all household comforts, he looked quite cheerful in the position. At that time, after traveling in many parts of the world, Maitreya, a great devotee of the Lord, and a friend and a well-wisher of the great sage Krishna Dvaipayana Vasya, reached the spot out of his own perfect accord. Maitreya Muni was greatly attached to him, and he was listening in a pleasing attitude, and his shoulder lowered. With a smile and a particular glance upon me, having allowed me to rest, the Lord spoke as follows. Vasu, I know from within your mind what you desired in the days of yore, when the Vasus and other demigods responsible for expanding the universe of affairs performed sacrifices. You particularly desire to achieve my association. This is very difficult for others to attain, but I awarded it unto you. Honest one, your personal life is the last and supermost, because in this term of life you have been awarded my ultimate favor. Now you can go to my transcendental abode by leaving this universe of conditioned living entities. Your visit to me in this lonely place, because of your pure and unflinching devotional service, is a great boon for you. Uddhava, in the lotus millennium, in the days of yore, at the beginning of the creation, I spoke unto Brahma, who is situated on the lotus that grows out of my navel, about my transcendental glories, which the great sages describe as Srimad Bhagavatam. Uddhava said, Vidyura, when I was thus favored at every moment by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and addressed by him with such great affection, my words failed in tears, and the hairs of my body erupted. After smearing my tears, I, with folded hands, spoke like thus. My Lord, devotees who engage in the transcendental loving service of your lotus feet have no difficulty in achieving gratification and liberation, but, great one, as far as I am concerned, I have preferred only to engage in the loving service of your lotus feet. My lord, even the learned sages become disturbed in their intelligence when they see that your greatness engages in fruitive work although you are free from all desires, that you take birth though you are unborn, that you flee out of fear of the enemy and take shelter in a form, although you are the controller of invincible time, and that you enjoy householder life surrounded by many women, although you enjoy in yourself. My lord, your eternal self is never divided by the influence of time, and there is no limitation to your perfect knowledge. Thus, you were sufficiently able to consult with yourself, yet you called upon me for consultation, as if bewildered, although you are never bewildered, and this act of yours bewilders me. My lord, kindly explain to us, if you think us competent to receive it, that transcendental knowledge which gives enlightenment about yourself, and which you explained before to Brahmaji. When I thus expressed my heartfelt desires unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the lotus-eyed Lord instructed me about his transcendental situation. I have studied the path of understanding, self-knowledge, from my spiritual master, Lord Vishnu, and thus, after circumambulating him, I have come to this place, very much aggrieved, due to separation. My dear Vidura, now I am mad for want of the pleasure of seeing him, and just to mitigate this, I am now proceeding to Badarikashrama in the Himalayas for association, as I have been instructed by him. There, Lord Vishnu, in his incarnation as the sages Nara and Narayana, has been undergoing great penance since time immemorial for the welfare of all amiable living entities. Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, after hearing from Uddhava all the annihilation of his friends and relatives, the learned Vidura pacified his overwhelming bereavement by dint of his transcendental knowledge. While Uddhava, the chief and most confidential among the devotees of the Lord, was going away, Vidura, in affection and confidence, questioned him. Vidura said, "No, Uddhava, because the servants of Vishnu, the Lord, wander in the interest of serving others, it is quite fit that you kindly describe the self-knowledge with which you have been enlightened by the Lord himself." Sri Uddhava said, "You may take lessons from the great learned sage Maitreya, who is nearby and who is worshipful for reception of transcendental knowledge. He was directly instructed by Lord Vishnu while he was about to quit this mortal world." Sukadeva Goswami said, "O king, after thus discussing with Vidura the transcendental name, fame, qualities on the bank of the Yamuna, Uddhava was overwhelmed with great affliction. He passed the night as if it were a moment, and thereafter he went away. The king inquired, at the end of the pastimes of the Lord of the three worlds, Sri Krishna, and after the disappearance of the members of the Vishnu and Bosha dynasties, who were the best of the great commanders, and why did Uddhava alone remain?" Suka Goswami replied, "My dear king, the cursing of the Brahmanas was only a plea, but the actual fact was the supreme desire of the Lord. He wanted to disappear from the face of the earth after dispatching his excessively numerous family members. He thought to himself as follows: now I shall leave the vision of this mundane world, and I see that Uddhava, the foremost of my devotees, is the only one who cannot be directly entrusted with knowledge about me. Uddhava is not inferior to me in any way, because he is never afflicted by the means of material nature. Therefore he may remain in this world in order to disseminate specific knowledge of the Lord Vishnu." Sukha Deva Goswami informed the king that Uddhava, being thus instructed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the source of all Vedic knowledge, and the spiritual master of the three worlds, reached the pilgrimage site of Badarik Ashrama and engaged himself there in trance to satisfy the Lord. Vidura also heard from Uddhava about the appearance and disappearance of Lord Krishna as a supersoul in the material world, which is the subject matter sought after with great perseverance by the great sages. The Lord's glorious acts and his acceptance of various transcendental forms for the performance of extraordinary pastimes in the mortal world are very difficult for anyone other than his devotees to understand, and for the beasts they are simply a mental disturbance. Understanding that he was remembered by Lord Krishna while quitting this world, Vidura began to cry loudly, overwhelmed by the ecstasy of love. After passing a few days on the bank of the river Yamuna, Vidura, the self-realized soul, reached the bank of the Ganges where the great sage Maitreya was situated. Thus ends this chapter, and is setting up a talk with Vidura and Maitreya. So, This is one of those chapters that goes back and forth and back and forth. People are talking, and it's not always clear in the text who is talking. So please follow along with me if you're not. Sometimes it goes back and forth, and everyone talks the same in this book. They really do. They all pontificate, and then one pontificates on the other one, and it's just, it could be very confusing, so please read. There was a line here I really liked at the end. I thought this was kind of funny. The Lord's glorious acts and his acceptance of various transcendental forms for the performance of extraordinary pastimes in the mortal world are very difficult for anyone other than his devotees to understand, and for the beast they are simply a mental disturbance. Beast doesn't mean like animals, and it doesn't mean like Dracula or the Wolfman. He's referring to beasts, I believe, in those devotees who just don't care, or maybe atheists in the Western definition of the world, and just are materialistic people, maybe sex addicted. That's what I figure a beast is. When I say atheist in the Western definition of the word, in the West, atheist means someone who does not believe in God. In India, from what I've read, traditionally, atheist meant someone who doesn't believe in the scriptures, but still may believe in God. But I think in India, it's just, there's no doubt that there's a God, like there is here in the West. So a beast is someone who is just, it's just it just bothers them. They just don't want to deal with it. And why don't they want to deal with it? Because it may upset them or may turn them away from being a beast. And I have met so many people like that. It's amazing. I'm not going to say they're necessarily beasts, but things were a mental disturbance to them because it's almost like they lived in a little box. And they didn't want to be disturbed. And they didn't want their ideas ruffled. And they didn't want to listen to other ideas. Because this box was very comfortable. That's what I believe that sentence is saying. But what do the beasts get? According to this, nothing. They don't get anything. That's what you get for being comfortable. You sacrifice the Lord. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Anyways, that's my perspective on it. Thoughts, comments, and all that stuff down below. Thank you for listening to me. And in the next video, in a couple days, we will go on Chapter 5. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare